Hey everyone, and welcome to What Did I Miss? Most fans would agree that now is a great time to be a fan of Star Trek, with a whopping 5 different live-action or animated series sharing new stories on Paramount Plus this year. While this is exciting, it has left many fans wondering what will be coming next. As jam-packed as 2022 is with new content, after 2023 there are no guarantees on the horizon for any of these series. The only thing that is certain is that the upcoming 3rd season of Star Trek Picard will be its last, already creating a sort of vacuum. Over the last few years, there have been many rumors and other stories about what will come next for Star Trek, but as of recording this video, Paramount has not released a blueprint for their flagship property past 2023. So I asked Nick from the YouTube channel Sci-Finatics to join me and take a look at 8 different projects that we could be seeing on screen in the near future. As always, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons to help support my channel, and also be sure to check out Sci-Finatics for some great content as well. Check the video description below for links to the channel. All right, so we're here with Nick from Sci-Finatics. He's joining us again on the channel. Hey, Nick, how's it going?
Good, Recast. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So today we're talking about planned Star Trek projects. All these are in some form of, production or rumor status, but I thought it'd be fun to kind of talk about them. So the first thing that I want to talk about is how you feel, Nick, about the future of the next Star Trek movie. For anybody that's not aware, I'll go over it really quick because it's a long story, but ever since 2016's Star Trek Beyond, there's been ups and downs, and there's been different directors, and directors have left. So just recently, Matt Shakman left to do a Marvel movie, and now the Star Trek film just lost its 2023 release date, which for me, I didn't think was a surprise. Once you lost a director, you can't make a movie in a year. So I've already done a video about it. I'll link it if anybody wants to see it. But Nick, what do you think about the future of the next Star Trek film?
Personally, I think the Kelvin universe has had its day. They did 3 films, obviously the 2009 original, Into Darkness and Beyond. And I kind of feel like, particularly now that we have Strange New Worlds, which is kind of going back and covering that sort of early era of the Enterprise, I kind of feel like the whole Kelvin universe thing has kind of played itself out. Like, I don't feel like I'm desperate for more stories with this particular crew. I kind of feel like we've had 3 films. They were good. Let's move on to other stuff now. So I'm not in any way disappointed that another Kelvin universe movie has been, scrapped or whatever, because I kind of feel like we should be moving into different territory now. I think they've had their time in the sun, and let's just let it be at 3 films.
That's a good point. I think you can get into a situation of character confusion too, because if you have a James Kirk on screen and on the small screen a Spock on both, I think it's you get into comparisons and something that usually doesn't ever benefit the narrative of either story. So I think you're right on. I think there will be another Star Trek film. There's no way there's not going to be another Star Trek film eventually.
I did hear a rumor that there was something going around about doing another Kelvin universe film, but doing what they did for the original series cast, but with the Next Generation kind of cast. So kind of rebooting with Picard and Riker and Data and co, which kind of sort of strikes me as a little bit, I don't know, a little bit too soon or something for that sort of thing to happen. I think if you wanted to tell a story about young Picard, for example, rather than doing that as a Kelvin universe film, I think it would be much more interesting to do that as a series set, say, in between Star Trek VI Undiscovered Country and Encounter at Farpoint, whether it's a movie or whether it's a limited series or something. The story of a young Picard, like a Lieutenant Picard or an Ensign Picard, serving on board the USS Reliant, or as the helmsman on the Stargazer or something before he becomes captain or something, set in that period, 15 years prior to Encounter at Farpoint or something like that, when, Picard was a younger officer or something. That would be more interesting to me than doing a kind of another Kelvin universe film, I think.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see which way they go. I know that at one point they had one of the writers from Star Trek Discovery, so I don't know if any of those plot lines would be fleshed out into a movie or something like that. But yeah, there will be another Star Trek film. It just won't be coming out in 2023. Something that will be coming out in 2023, though, that we know is coming out in 2023, is the Khan and Exile podcast. Now, for fans that don't know about this, on Star Trek Day this past year, it was revealed that there would be a scripted podcast called Star Trek Khan, SETI Alpha 5. IGN is who I got the report from. But this new scripted podcast, which was announced during the Star Trek Day celebrations by Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan director Nicholas Meyer, will arrive in early 2023 and will examine what happened in the years after Captain Kirk left Khan on the untamed world of SETI Alpha 5 and tells the story of Khan and his followers before the events of the second Star Trek film. And they have a graphic here. I'm not sure if it's fan-made or not, but so this will be something new. It'll be a new medium, scripted podcast. I know these are popular. I know my fiance listens to them. I listen to podcasts. I don't think I've ever listened to a scripted one, though. I will be listening to this one. I mean, Nicholas Meyer, you know, anybody who knows anything about Star Trek should have reverence for Nicholas Meyer. He revitalized the franchise with the movie Wrath of Khan. I don't know if we'd have Star Trek as we have it now without him, so I'll be listening to it. But what do you think? Do you think it'll have the same popularity? Do you think it'll, you know, people listen to it or no?
Look, I think people will listen to it, but I honestly can't see how it would have the same level of popularity. The first time I heard about this as a concept, it's like, okay, well, what is it going to be? Like, you know, obviously we've got Khan and a bunch of his followers on the planet, you know, it's dusty, there's sort of sandstorms, there's, you know, there's little earbugs crawling around the place. You know, they're just going to be hanging out in the wreck of the Botany Bay, playing cards. It sort of, it doesn't seem like it has that much broader scope, you know, for being a really entertaining kind of series. It's sort of like, well, they're going to say, yep, okay, it's pretty dusty here, isn't it? Yes, it is. Oh, you see those worms in the sand yesterday? Yep, I saw that. Oh, let's play a game of cards in the wreck of the Botany Bay. Okay, you know, it's like, what are they going to do? It's, you know, do you know what I mean? It's sort of, it feels like it's quite limited as a scope for stories, you know?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I would have to agree. You know, for, like I said, Nicholas Meyer is why I will listen to it. But, you know, Star Trek fans are sometimes inconsistent about, like, you know, they want new stories, or do they want, you know, they want something new, or they want, you know, things to be like Star Trek, like Gene Roddenberry Star Trek. So this won't be Gene Roddenberry Star Trek. I mean, this will be very different. Besides it, just the storyline itself, besides it being, you know, on a podcast. So yeah. I don't know, you know, I think that, I think it'll be interesting. I don't know if it'll be popular or not, but I'll definitely listen to it and see what it has. But it's interesting that, you know, they're deciding to go that way and just basically trying anything they can. And Nicholas Meyer did state that if it was popular, it could lead to something live action. So there's that. But I guess we'll have to wait and see.
The thing that struck me about it as being limited, I suppose, is the fact that what is the most interesting thing about Khan as a villain? In Space Seed, he's got his big super brain. He's trying to take over the Enterprise and capture the ship. In Star Trek 2, he tried to take over the ship, took over the Reliant or whatever it was. In that film, the most interesting aspect of Khan is him versus Kirk. You know, doing that sort of, trying to outthink each other. Him trying to take over things.
The chess match, yeah.
That chess match that goes on between those two characters. Right. That's the most interesting aspect of Khan. If Khan is just stuck on a dusty planet for this whole podcast, he hasn't got a nemesis. It's just going to be him and his crew, you know, battling the elements. There can't be any of that, you know, as you say, that chess match, that mental chess match that played out between Khan and Kirk. So if you take that away from the Khan character, is there going to be something that's going to, you know, capture our interest here? Because it seems to me like you're working on a landscape that is quite limited and doesn't give you the essence of what that Khan character is, which is that, as you say, the chess match.
Right. People complained about Deep Space Nine because it was a space station not going anywhere. Now you're in a post-apocalyptic setting where nobody's going. It's basically
Going
The Walking
anywhere.
Dead in Star Trek,
Yes,
So
exactly.
so the next thing I want to talk about was something I read last week. Unfortunately, I can't remember where it was, but somebody posed the question of, is Star Trek ready for a live action comedy series? Basically in the vein of what Lord X is doing in an animated form, and kind of like the first 2 seasons of the Orville, more or less.
You know what? I think it is, and you know why? She-Hulk. She-Hulk
Yeah.
She-Hulk has kind of proven, I think, that you can do a comedy series or a little bit of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge, sort of tongue in cheek series in the Marvel universe, and we know it worked with the Orville in the first 2 seasons, and obviously Orville now has skewed itself a little bit away from comedy. But I think She-Hulk has been so popular for the Marvel franchise, and it seems to be doing really well. And I've been watching it and enjoying it. And I think the comedy has been working in the context of that show. So I kind of say, why not? I think you could. I think you could certainly do comedy in Star Trek. I mean, Strange New Worlds in season 1 had more humor in it, I think, than the Orville did in season 3. So if you were to do it like the way Strange New Worlds did it in season 1, but just take it, maybe 1 or 2 steps further, I don't see any problem in that. I think that could work, perfectly well. Having a quirky crew and a captain that doesn't take himself too seriously, I would be totally up for that. And I think shows like the Orville and also She-Hulk has proven that you can add comedy into a franchise that is historically a bit more dramatic, and it works.
I completely agree. I mean, I've been on record as saying that like Lower Decks is one of my favorite Star Trek shows, and now with their last episode going to Deep Space Nine, I think they've overtaken Strange New Worlds as my favorite. And that show is funny. I mean, it's not just like the reverence to Star Trek. It's legit funny. Mike McMahon, Rick and Morty, he's do Solar Opposites. He does other funny stuff. He's funny.
Yeah.
He gets Star Trek, so you can hire people that could, create this, and people are talking about like, do something new. There you go. I mean, that's exactly what you do. And you brought up a good point. The Orville going up against Strange New Worlds. Strange New Worlds was funnier than the Orville this season, putting up third season versus first season of the Strange New Worlds. So, and I like it. Even the that Picard episode where he's got the eye patch and he's acting. I mean, that episode is pretty dark, I think, because that's the one where I think Seven blows everybody away.
Yes,
but so it's kind of like light and dark.
And Icheb gets his eye plucked out of his head or whatever as well. Yeah,
it's up and down, but I love stuff like that. Like you mentioned, Strange New Worlds with him doing Pike doing the
pirate impression.
Stuff. That was hilarious. So I'm all for that too. I think that would be good. This next one is something that was actually teased, I think, going on 2 years now. Basically, even before Michelle Yeoh left Star Trek Discovery, is a Section 31 show, a series based on Section 31, whether it be a limited series or an ongoing one. Producers said that they were hiring writers, they were in production, but they wouldn't do more than 5 series at a time. And Section 31 was the 6th series, so they weren't producing it at the time. Since then, we know that Picard is going off the air, so there's going to be an open slot. There will be another Star Trek movie. There will be a new Star Trek live action series. Could it be a Section 31 show? You brought up a good point about She-Hulk doing a lot of success for Marvel. I think if you look at a show like Andor and see what it's doing for Star Wars, it's a different Star Wars show, but people love it because of that point. And I think Section 31 just use Andor as a blueprint, and you'd have a successful product.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think Section 31 is one of those shows that could go either way in its popularity. I think it could either be that show that nobody really was desperate for or asked for, but could actually turn out to be one of the more interesting Star Trek series if it's done right. I think Michelle Yeoh is fantastic. I love the way her character was written in Discovery, and I think she would make a good leader for that series. I think it's all about. It all depends on how it's populated. Really, I think. If it's got interesting characters in it and it's, on board some sort of ship and they're kind of, I don't know, whether they're using the Guardian of Forever or something to time jump around and fix different, errors in the timeline, sort of a bit like a Doctor Who or a Legends of Tomorrow kind of thing. I think that could be interesting. And if it's, as I said, it's all about getting the cast right. I think if the casting is done well, there's some really engaging characters in it, and we've got some really interesting stories. I think it obviously has a pretty broad scope. If they were doing a kind of a time ship kind of thing where they were jumping around to different timelines within the Star Trek universe and kind of correcting events and things like that. And for us to be able to see maybe some events that happened in the past that maybe they had a hand in fixing up or something, I think that could be really interesting.
That's a great point. I think that, because it's Section 31, so you wouldn't know what they're doing. So they basically have carte blanche to do whatever they want and say like, oh yeah, we were there the whole time. You just never saw us, It's
exactly,
Back to the Future too everywhere. Marty McFly's here, Marty McFly's there. So and then you start with, Philippa Giorgio. That's a bedrock character right there. But you could easily build a good cast just by having a starting point like that. So, yeah, I would like that. The other show that's kind of been teased, like the Section 31 show, is a show based on Starfleet Academy. Now, in the last season of Discovery, we saw that there was a new Starfleet Academy being created and that Tilly had gone there. I think in the trailer, it shows that she's back on the Discovery, or she's at least on the series next season at some point.
Yes.
But it was kind of teased that she was going to be a part of that organization. I know that series would be geared towards a younger audience than myself. So I don't know if I would enjoy it. I don't know. I don't think I'd enjoy it as much as the Section 31 show. It could be just as popular. But myself as a fan, that's my opinion. How do you feel?
Yeah, look, I think if it turned out to be something like, say, the Next Generation episode, The First Duty, the one that Robert Duncan McNeil was in with, with Will Wheaton at Starfleet Academy, and they did, and they did that. Was it the aerial maneuver that got another cadet killed or whatever? If it was something like that, I mean that could be interesting. My immediate worry is that it would end up being like a CW show, populated by 19 or 20-year-olds sort of thing. It all comes down to casting, I think, and I think if it's not done in too much of a what's the best way to say this? If it's
I think CW is a good way, because that's actually what I was thinking. But like those CW, DC shows that it's kind of like okay, after a while, it's humor that kind of gets old because it's geared towards a different generation. And I mean they could get good actors, they could have good writing. We just talked about a comedy show. You could probably do a good comedy show with the Starfleet Academy, because they're more like Lower Decks. They're more inclined to mess up. You don't. If you see Picard keep screwing up, you don't think that he's the best captain in the fleet. So I think it lends itself to that kind of storytelling. But I feel like generationally there might be a gap there, kind of like with Prodigy. I like that show, but I don't love that show, and I think it's not geared as much towards people in my age group, so to speak. So
I mean, if it was something like, I suppose, the Star Trek version of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, for example, or I suppose to a certain extent, maybe a lesser extent, The Flash or whatever, where you've got mostly your early 20-somethings cast, but you've also got a few the older mentor type characters. So I think if you had a good balance of students at Starfleet Academy, but it was also, you might have had the dean of Starfleet Academy or different lecturers in different subjects, that were older, more seasoned Starfleet officers as well, like O'Brien, teaching engineering or something, because I think didn't he go off to
show up,
didn't he go off to be the lecturer of engineering or something at Starfleet Academy? If you had a good balance of cast members there, a few more seasoned ones playing the lecturers, or the teachers, and then you got the kids as well. I think that could be interesting if it was but then again, does that then become like another version of Lower Decks? Because Lower Decks is all your kind of your younger
That's a good
ensigns
point.
and stuff. It seems like that box is almost, that box is already checked, because we've got the younger ensigns doing their kind of, rebellious-y sort of stuff on the Cerritos. How would you do Starfleet Academy where you got a bunch of students just kind of doing the same sort of thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, unless they give it to Mike McMahon, the creator of Lower Decks, like kind of like
Yeah.
give him a chance at like that kind of humor. But then again, like you said, it's kind of 6 and 1, half a dozen the other. You've got the kind of the same thing in two different forms. So no, and you
Yep.
do want to diversify. You don't ever.
Yes.
You've got 5 series out there at any time, and they've all got to
Yep.
be a little bit different, or no. One of them or 2 of them are going to suffer. This next show, it's a show based on the character Janeway. Now, this would probably be in the same vein as Star Trek Picard, following her character. So many years after the Voyager got back, and she was an admiral, as we saw in Nemesis, I believe. And she said to comicbook.com, well, I think Picard is done, unless I'm quite mistaken. I think they finished, but it's not likely that Janeway will show up on Picard. But who knows what will happen to her in the near future. There seems to be, as I said to you earlier, a tremendous resurgence here, a rather vital one. So for the first time, I'm actually looking at it with new eyes. I wonder what would happen if Janeway were to come back to live action. Kate Mulgrew has been a working actress for many years still. She's, I believe she's many years younger than Patrick Stewart. I could see her doing it. I would want it to be different than Picard, though. I don't know.
Yeah.
For one, I don't know if Picard has been popular enough for her to kind of continue on with that same vein. But what do you think about it?
Look, out of all of the new show ideas that we've just spoken about, this is probably the one I'm be most interested in seeing.
Really?
I think Picard has proven that there is an appetite for revisiting characters that we know and love, at another point in their lives. I think everybody is looking forward to season 3 of Picard so much, because we get to revisit the Next Generation cast. There's an appetite for that. So personally, I would be all up for this series completely. And as you said, I think Kate Mulgrew has said on more than one occasion that she has a love for the Star Trek franchise. She has been loving what she's been doing on Prodigy, and that she'd totally be up for that sort of show if somebody asked her to do it. So, I say I say thumbs up to that as an idea.
Yeah, I think it could be interesting. Again, Star Trek Picard, I think, is a weird kind of it's a mixed bag, because I think in a lot of ways I enjoyed it, but in a lot of ways I thought it kind of was fan service just for the sake of fan service. I know in some ways that's what Terry Matalas, the showrunner, is trying to give characters better endings than a lot of us believe they got the first time around. So Janeway could be a vehicle for that. I think, like you were alluding to, and Kate Mulgrew is such a great actress. I'd love to see her take it again. I'm almost, I know that some Voyager characters showed up on Picard. Maybe some Deep Space Nine characters should show up on Janeway. So yeah, I could definitely be talked into watching that series. I mean, Kate Mulgrew is a treasure. Anything she's going to be in is going to be awesome. And she's very, conscious of that character too. I remember an interview she did about Prodigy where, and we forgot to mention that she will be returning to the character in animated form with the second half of the first season of Prodigy, which I believe starts at the end of this month.
I think it's 25th,
which is weird
October,
because the season started a year ago this month. But the second half
it feels more like a season.
Yeah.
It feels more like a season 2 than a second half of season 1, doesn't it?
Yeah, there had to be a contract reason behind that, but it's weird. So she will already be returning to the character in animated form, and
as Admiral Janeway as well as hologram Janeway. So
right.
He gets the double dip.
Right. She's already been the hologram. So that'll be one way to continue her character. So that, I guess they're already testing the waters there. Another show that has been kicked around the rumor mill has been a show based on Seven of Nine, or I think she just goes by Seven now. Of course, she's in the next season. Her and Rafi, I think, are the only Picard cast members, only original cast members. So they're obviously still very interested in her character. She's seen a resurgence in popularity. as far as her character, though, I almost think that we've seen in the trailer, we don't know what's going to happen with her character, obviously, in the third season of Picard, but we do know that she's going to be serving in Starfleet again. For me, that almost makes her character less interesting. Like, I almost would rather see her in the Fenris Rangers. I think that would have been a cool, storyline.
Unless, of course, because we know that she's the first officer of the Titan.
Right.
We know she holds the rank of commander, but we haven't found out who the captain of the Titan is yet. We know it's not going to be Picard and Riker and co. They're on board the ship for whatever adventure they happen to be going on, but they haven't revealed who the actual captain of the Titan is yet. And I think if you put somebody who, say, a bit like how Sisko had that massive kind of grudge against Picard because Picard as Locutus was behind the attack of Wolf 359 that killed his wife. Unless you put someone in the captain's chair that had lost a loved one or something through the Borg, and maybe was against 7 of 9 being allowed to join Starfleet. So if you put somebody like that in the captain's chair, then you've immediately got a bit of probably headbutting and a bit of animosity there between Seven and whoever the captain's going to be. That I think could be interesting to play out on screen. I think it's certainly a intriguing prospect, and I think would I watch a show with Seven as the first officer on board the USS Titan? Sure, I would. Obviously, season 3 of Picard will give us a greater insight as to what that could potentially be. But I think Seven and Raffi are interesting enough characters to make that work.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Borg, because I would like to see, the Borg were first presented as a force of nature, and it was almost, kind of like in Jaws, you don't want to see the shark all the time. You want to it just wants to be this thing that's scary, and where's it coming from? But since then we've had Voyager, and then the first season of Picard, now the Borg are portrayed as like refugees, that you've got the XBs that are just being, so it's a whole different landscape now. So since the Borg has kind of been nerfed, I think that
also
maybe
with Girardi taking over Girardi taken over the board too, there's a whole nother the Borg now. They're different. The Girardi's kind of because she went back in time and changed the Borg. So how's that played into things as well?
Terry Matalas said on Twitter that they're literally called the Girardi. They're a different species. They're a different, and they were and she was purposely staying out of history's way. Very convenient for the plot,
Okay, right.
Very convenient. But I think he referred to them as the Girardi. But
so it's a bit like the Borg that Hugh infected or whatever, and suddenly gained their individuality. They were sort of a separate offshoot to the normal Borg as well.
They're cut off from the collective. So
yes.
So I think it'd be cool to kind of see the history of the Borg. We've seen a few Borg queens now.
Annie Wershing, yes.
So I thought she did a really good job. I really liked her portrayal. I thought she does the sexy, scary kind of thing. I think that she definitely pulled it off. So I would see her. I'd like to see her. I was going to say I'd like to see more of her, but that sounds bad. I'd like to see her, I'd like to see her, in another series, or see her continue on with that character. I liked her relationship with Seven too. So yeah, that could work. Another kind of show in a similar vein as the last two, but in a different time period, would be a show based on Hikaru Sulu. This is a recent rumor that I read, I think last week. This would take place, after Strange New Worlds, after the original series, but possibly contain actors from Strange New Worlds. You could have an older Spock show up with Sulu as the captain, because this would be a Captain Sulu series. This wouldn't be a Sulu before the Enterprise.
So this wouldn't be George Takei as a 90-year-old.
No, I'd love to hear him narrate it though. I'd love to see him involved in some way, have him play, his father or something. I'd love to see him involved some way. He's done so much for Star Trek over the years.
Would it be like that episode of the episode of Voyager that took place
I
on
know
the
what you're talking
Excelsior,
about.
where Tuvok was part of the crew or whatever.
Yeah,
Would it be
which
something
was
like?
yeah, it was right before the Undiscovered Country. Yeah,
Yes.
that was
Yeah.
during that same time period. So yeah, you know, Captain Sulu is kind of like one of those series that people kind of talk about that like, weren't we kind of promised that and never got it? Kind of like a Captain Riker Titan series, you know, how they like teased him
Yeah.
leaving, and you know they showed Sulu as a captain. So
To
maybe
me,
there's
that does
something
feel.
there.
Yeah. To me, that does feel like something. If we were going to get something like that, that should have happened sometime after Star Trek 6 Undiscovered Country came out, but before Star Trek 2009 came out. I think that
Mhm.
it kind of felt like there was, or or when around that Voyager episode kind of happened, it kind of felt like that was kind of like the peak period for that sort of show to happen. It kind of feels like, it sort of feels a little bit like the doors shut on that kind of, as an idea. That sort of, to me, that feels like something that should have come out in the sort of, the early to mid 2000s or something to that effect. It's, I think it, because what would you do? You obviously have to recast Sulu in someone like John Cho, who played Sulu in the
Mhm.
Kelvin movies or whatever, and you obviously, I guess you'd make it on the Excelsior or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, it kind of feels like it too much time has passed, or we've sort of, that was something that should have happened. I guess 15 years ago, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, you know, when I heard it, the first thing I know I talked about Star Wars Andor before, and I compared Star Trek to
Mhm.
them. I'm going to compare Star Trek to Star Wars again. Star Wars is mining different time periods of their universe. You
Mm,
know, you've got the
yep.
Mandalorian, which takes place after the original trilogy, and now you've got Andor, which takes place before the original trilogy. And with Sulu, I think that's what Star Trek could do. You know, they talk about, you know, why do you have to keep doing the recasting, rebooting? You know, there's a
Mm,
lot of Star Trek that doesn't have to include the Enterprise. There's a lot you could do in universe and not, you not touch what's already canon or expand on it. So I think that would be the main get from a Sulu series. We would be seeing something we haven't seen before. Maybe
mm,
we'd see an older Kirk, like Paul. You know, the characters from Strange New Worlds appear as older
mhm,
characters.
mhm,
That could be cool. But I think that's kind of what you would get from that. And then you have to think about who you cast, because whoever you cast would have to probably show up on Strange New Worlds younger at certain
yes,
points. So then that could
exactly.
be,
Yeah.
kind of crazy too. We talked about character confusion before. You know, I don't think you could do a Kelvinverse movie if you've got Sulu in one time period, Strange New Worlds in another time period, and
Yeah.
a different.
To
I
me,
think that,
to me, it feels like you're opening a bit of a can of worms
yeah,
to get
because you
into
could
that.
step on canon. You definitely could step on
Yeah.
canon. You would be dealing with the Enterprise B at that point, something, that's either a good or bad thing to deal with. But again, I talked about, like, we don't have to talk about the Enterprise for everything for Star Trek. So,
Yeah.
that's probably out of the eight. That's probably the least
Least likely.
appetizing
Yeah.
one. Well, that was lots of fun. Thank you, Nick, for joining us once again on What Did I Miss? You are welcome anytime. Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure, Eric. Thanks for having me on the show, and be sure to check out my channel, Sci-Finatics. I'm sure Eric will put a link in the description if anyone's interested in checking out my channel as well, which obviously covers a lot of Star Trek content.
Yeah, definitely. If you like my channel, you're going to love his channel too. I will put a link down in the description. I'll put a link at the end of the video too. Thanks again, Nick, and we'll talk
Pleasure.
to you soon. And thanks everybody for joining us. We'll see you next time on What Did I Miss?